Hello there? I'm a regular woman in her mid-30s. Life had been perfectly ordinary until I met my husband and subsequently experienced a series of shocking events. It's so dramatic it could make for a TV soap opera. I'm sure you'll find it entertaining. So without further ado, let's dive into my story. I met my husband when I was 29. Not through a whirlwind romance or destiny, but a simple blind date. On meeting him, I was taken in by his dignity, composure, and diligent demeanor, so we began dating with a lot of positivity. After dating for 3 years, we got married. The discussion about marriage came naturally, as we were getting older and had been in a long-term relationship. Before I knew it, I was living as his wife. My husband owned a small manufacturing factory, a company with a half-dozen employees always busy with plenty of subcontracting work. As for me, I was working in public relations and marketing. We both were very busy on weekdays, completely drained by the time we got home, and only on weekends could we revel in our passionate newlywed phase. After 3 years of such routine married life, my husband's factory started doing better, and I got a promotion at work. Our lives became even busier. Perhaps due to this, we didn't have a child as quickly as we'd hoped. They say you must look at the stars to catch one. But we were always swamped with work, barely having enough energy to sleep. He suggested that life wasn't short, that we should first focus on earning well, and once we had some leisure, we could consider having a child. So, believing in him and myself, we continued our ordinary lives, but at some point, a significant crisis visited our home. My husband, who wouldn't even touch alcohol, began coming home drunk every day. I could overhear him on the phone with women from bars. I thought it might be occasional due to his business engagements, but he started regularly visiting these high-end lounges that hosted female escorts. The man whom I had known as innocent and virtuous had changed. I learned about all this and exploded at my husband. "I got a call from the bar's madam while you were sleeping yesterday," I spat at him. "She says you owe over $5,000 and she wants it paid soon, you disgusting man. You not only visit bars with women, but also rack up a huge debt. You're going out for drinks with these women, aren't you? Do you think just because you're a businessman, it's okay to drink and go to these places? Are you creating a fuss because you can't understand even that? I've heard that other wives cook hangover soups for their husbands who visit such places, fawning over them for earning money. It's hilarious. Do you earn so much that you're talking like this? You know we spend more of my money on living expenses. Anyway, if I find you at those shady bars one more time, you won't get off easy. I'm giving you one last chance. Behave yourself." All right, you're scary. I won't go, okay?" While I understood my husband visiting bars for business purposes, going to places with female hosts was a significant issue for me. Despite my husband's constant assurance of his innocence, suspicion kept gnawing at me. I mean, what woman would tolerate her husband spending evenings at upscale clubs filled with attractive women? Wouldn't you agree? I remember warning him, in no uncertain terms, that if he set foot in such a place again, there would be consequences. Things remained quiet for a while until he got caught again. He strolled in one evening reeking of women's perfume, and that was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him, "If you keep this up, I'm filing for divorce. I refuse to share a house with a man who parties this way." His retort? "So what? I'm a businessman, aren't I? Going out for drinks is just part of the job. You work too, right? So what's wrong with me having some fun at a club where drinks are served? Are you losing your mind, suggesting that I should stop going out and you're considering the same? What utter nonsense! Why should you get to do these things? Well, I can't." He was becoming intolerable. That night, in his drunken state, he slapped me. The worst kind of husband, as everyone knows, is one who gets drunk and hits his wife. I decided it was impossible to stay with such a person. After getting slapped, I packed my bags and left. I was thinking of gathering enough evidence of his nightly escapades to file for divorce. For a few days, I did some investigating on my husband. It wasn't just his late-night adventures. He was seeing 3 other women and had taken to gambling. I discovered he'd been frequenting a well-known gambling house in a residential area. Women, liquor, and gambling. The unholy trinity of the worst divorce reasons. My husband had them all. I gathered enough evidence and presented him with the divorce papers. I demanded he sign them and split his assets with me, or else I'd drag him to court and humiliate him. He erupted. "Are you spying on me? You've plotted this, haven't you? You're terrifying to have been living with such a woman." I countered, "I feel ashamed to have lived with a man like you. I thought you were good, decent. But you're the lowest of the low, ruining your life with alcohol, women, and gambling. If you don't want to be embarrassed in court, split your assets and sign the papers." Reluctantly, he agreed. "Fine, I'll do it. I never intended to live with you for long anyway. Why should I keep living with a wife who despises me? And I've made some money gambling, so I'll give you the alimony you're asking for. I'm not a desperate man clinging onto money." And so, we didn't have to go to court. I received a satisfactory alimony and parted ways with my husband. I quit my job and relocated, hoping never to see his face again. Looking at my account, you might think I was unscathed, but the truth is my heart had been torn and twisted multiple times. The knowledge that a man I'd thought was noble was scum. It was a betrayal beyond words. My mental health could barely keep up. Unable to bear the thought of running into my ex-husband, I settled in a city in New York and found a new job. Wanting to unravel my complicated emotions, I found myself stepping into a church for the first time. The moment I started praying, tears fell uncontrollably. Tears had welled up inside me for a while, a lump in my chest too stubborn to dissolve. But amidst that, I found solace in someone who was there to comfort me. He was the pastor, a young man my age, but his words felt far wiser than my own. "You must have had it tough, sister," he said, his voice a soothing lullaby. "It's been a long time since I've seen someone in such distress. Would you like to share your story? I'd like to pray with you, offer you some comfort." "I must have made quite a scene in the church, Pastor," I replied with a sigh. "I'm sorry about that. Truth is, I've just been through a divorce. My ex-husband caused me a great deal of pain, and I guess that's why my heart's so heavy. I've been praying fervently to God to help me forget, to lighten this burden." True to his calling, the pastor possessed an empathy beyond comparison. He sat next to me, joined me in cursing my ex-husband, and then prayed for my relief. There was a profound sense of liberation in being consoled, and I felt an immense weight lifted from my heart and shoulders. We exchanged stories, and he shared with me that he had lost his wife to cancer a year ago. As he spoke of her, a twinge of longing colored his eyes red. This time I found myself comforting him. "Your heart must ache terribly, Pastor," I said. "But remember, love is healed with love. Please, when you're ready, find another love and let your departed wife rest in peace. She'd want that for you." The pastor took a deep breath and then surprised me. "You know, sister, to forget your rotten ex-husband, perhaps you need to find a new love as well. In fact, we both seem to be in a position where we're seeking love again." His words resonated with me, and as we parted, we made a pact to find new love quickly. But then, as I started to leave, he looked into my eyes and said something I'd never expected. "Sister, have you ever considered finding healing from your pain through me? I feel like I've met a woman who I could love just as much, if not more, than my departed wife. In fact, the moment you first stepped into our church, I was captivated. You felt like a gift from God. Startled, I protested. Pastor, no matter how you feel, how can we entertain the idea of romance in such a holy place? He smiled gently at me. Is there a law stating that pastors cannot fall in love? If you are willing, I would like to get to know you with marriage in mind. I am trembling with nervousness as I confess this. Let's look past the pastor and the parishioner and explore our connection as a man and a woman. I was taken aback by his unexpected confession. Having recently divorced, I was unprepared, and so I kindly declined his offer. But he was persistent, reaching out to me daily, doing his best to win my heart. And as time passed, I realized that it would be foolish to reject the idea of love just because my divorce was still fresh. Furthermore, I felt a growing affection for him and didn't want to miss an opportunity. So when he confessed his feelings for the third time, I accepted. And thus, we both found ourselves rapidly falling into the whirlpool of love. Not long after, our relationship had blossomed to the point where I was giving myself, body and soul, to him. The man of the cloth, my boyfriend, after a mere season proposed. I was hopelessly in love with him, so I saw no reason to refuse. I said, yes, but life has a strange way of twisting the plot. I had been dealing with stress-induced amenorrhea since before my divorce, so I went to the hospital to get it checked out. The shocking revelation came. It wasn't stress but pregnancy that was causing the lack of menstruation. There was no question the child was my ex-husband's. While pregnancy is often considered a blessing, carrying my repugnant ex's child didn't fill me with joy. However, the thought of harming the baby was unimaginable, and I resolved to give birth. I decided to call my pastor boyfriend to confess the truth and suggest we break up. I didn't want to lose him, but asking a man to accept a woman pregnant with another man's child was beyond audacity. Breaking up seemed the only fair thing to do. David, I'm pregnant. I thought my cycle had stopped because of stress, but that wasn't the case. I'm carrying my ex's child, I confessed, my voice barely more than a whisper. What are you gonna do? Please don't tell me you're thinking about breaking up. Are you breaking up with me because of this? He sounded more hurt than shocked. Why should we part ways just because you're carrying someone else's child? I can't bear the thought of you returning to that lowlife. I'm not going back to him, but I can't continue to see you either. David, I don't have the audacity to keep dating you while I'm pregnant with another man's child. We should break up. I don't want to be a burden to you. It doesn't matter to me that you're pregnant with another man's child. My love for you doesn't change. Please don't leave me. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the father of the child you're carrying. Please don't let me go. David's love for me was stronger than I had thought. Yet I could not accept his feelings. It felt fundamentally wrong to ask him to raise another man's child. Moreover, the potential scandal could destroy his position in the church. I decided it was best to leave him. So, I sent David away and moved immediately, changing my phone number as well. Living alone, however, soon made me feel unjust. After all, it was my ex's child. Shouldn't he contribute to the child's upbringing? I decided to contact him and went to see him. He had become more of a ruffian than when I had left him. I cut to the chase immediately. I'm pregnant, 8 weeks along. I conceived before our divorce, I told him, my voice steady despite the rage boiling within me. He only scoffed in response. So what? You want me to take responsibility? Or are you here for child support? Yes. For child support. I'm going to raise this child alone. And I think I should receive some support from the child's biological father, I said, bracing myself for the inevitable fight. Not long had passed when the thought of alimony was clear in my mind. Give me 20 years' worth of child support, and you won't have to see me again," I asserted confidently to my ex-husband. The request felt justified, but he just laughed, his mockery echoing in the sterile atmosphere of the lawyer's office. "Are you kidding me?" He laughed bitterly, leaning back in his chair. "You want me to pay for a kid that may not even be mine? Who knows who else you've been seeing? Don't try to swindle me." His accusation was a stab to my integrity. "I have never cheated," I shot back. "Unlike some people." He shook his head, smirking. "Why should I believe you? Don't think you can weasel money out of me with this sudden pregnancy story. I've paid you enough in the divorce settlement." "Is that how you see me? A money-grabbing woman?" "Well, I was mistaken to seek your help. I'll raise our child on my own. You'll get your karma one day." "Go ahead and pray for my downfall, woman. Just don't come back here. I'm living with my girlfriend now and don't need any unnecessary drama." "A girlfriend, huh? Another one wooed by your money, no doubt. And once you fall, she'll leave you." "We'll see about that. Weren't you the one who married me for my wealth? I thought you were a decent man." "I was blind. Anyway, this conversation is going nowhere. Let's not cross paths again." "Sounds good to me. Don't come begging for money again." I left my ex-husband's office, my hands empty, but my resolve strengthened. I decided then and there to fight for child support through legal means once the baby was born. I worked, took prenatal classes, and tried to prepare myself for a life as a single mother. To my surprise, my pastor ex-boyfriend David found his way to my apartment one day. "Why did you just disappear?" "You even changed your phone number," he accused lightly. "David! How did you find me?" I questioned, surprise evident in my voice. "I am a well-known pastor in this town. It's not hard to find out." "Did you go see your ex-husband? Tell me honestly. Why does it matter to you? We're over, remember? Now if you'll excuse me, but I can't let you go. Not when there's a child involved." "What does the baby have to do with anything?" I snapped. "This is my problem, not yours. But I want to make it our problem. I want to be there as a father and a husband. Blood doesn't define a family. Love does. I am confident I can be a good father and husband. So marry me. Stop pushing your luck. If word gets out that you're raising someone else's child, it will ruin not only me and the baby, but your reputation as well. Not everyone in this world has your compassionate heart. You know, and what did your parents ever do to deserve a daughter-in-law like me, forced to accept a grandchild without a drop of their own blood in its veins? Just because you're okay with this doesn't mean it's right. Please think this through more carefully," I implored my pastor boyfriend, trying to convince him to break up with me. He, however, didn't waver a bit. He cried, begging me to marry him. I didn't know why I deserved a man like him, but after much pondering, I decided to follow my heart. I decided shamelessly to marry my pastor boyfriend. Naturally, his parents opposed when they found out about my ex-husband's baby I was carrying. I didn't want to start a marriage on a lie, so I decided to reveal the truth, regardless of the potential backlash, despite his parents' opposition. My boyfriend didn't change his mind. As his parents hadn't given us their blessing yet, he suggested we get our marriage license first and start our life together. Watching a man of the cloth defy his parents for me was incredibly difficult. It felt like all of this was my fault, and I couldn't help but feel guilt towards those who were affected. So, his parents refrained from visiting his church. They were giving us time, an opportunity to break up. However, as time passed, our love grew stronger and we became inseparable. Months later, my baby bump became more prominent, with the due date a month away. Church members were excited, curious about how the son resembling their pastor would look like and showering us with support. One day, the person who was driving the church vehicle got a back injury and had to quit. A new driver was hired, a detail my husband and I weren't aware of as a church elder handled it. One day, I saw the new driver dropping off church members and coming up to the church. I was in shock. The man now standing in front of the church was the real father of my unborn child, my despicable ex-husband. I didn't know why he had ended up as a driver, but I had a hunch that his appearance would complicate things. Frozen in place, I saw my ex-husband greet me with a jovial smile. "Look at your belly. It's huge. Guess we are somewhat connected after all. Heard you're the pastor's wife here. Good for you, successfully snagging a rich husband while pregnant." He jeered. "Why are you here?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "Are you here to torment me?" "No, not at all," he defended himself. "I needed a job desperately, so I applied here. Ended up losing my factory and home to gambling, you see. True to your word. My lover took off the moment my fortune crumbled. I told my friend one day, pouring my heart out over a cup of diner coffee in a small town in Idaho. This woman, who I thought loved me, left without a second glance. You see, I started off as a limousine driver, blissfully ignorant of what I was getting myself into. Don't overthink it. They'd say, I wish I had paid more heed to those words. The pastor, the man my ex-wife was now seeing, and I had no business tearing each other apart. The church was where I saw her every Sunday, her sanctimonious smile grating on my nerves. My ex-husband had been just as ignorant as I had been when we first started off. By a stroke of sheer luck, he had managed to secure a job in this small town. Unfortunately, his gambling habit led him to his downfall. The church became our battleground, and seeing him every week sent shivers down my spine. He didn't seem like the type to stay quiet, and I was deeply worried. The moment I brought the last of the parishioners back from a church outing and returned to the church, the pastor stepped into my office, stating he needed to discuss something. My head was hung low in contemplation, while my current husband asked the pastor what was going on. "Oh, you're the new driver. I meant to greet you earlier, but I've been busy." "Please have a seat," he said, trying to lighten the tense atmosphere. "It's an honor to meet you, Pastor. And I must say, your decision to adopt and raise another man's child is admirable." His comments stirred the room, making me feel proud of my current husband, David, and his courage. My ex-wife seemed to have chosen well this time. As my ex-husband rambled on, Robert removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes before staring back at him. "Who are you to know our secrets?" The audacity of the man. He threatened to reveal the truth, that the child in her womb was his. He claimed fate had brought us back together and that he was glad to be rid of his former wife. The idea of his loud mouth causing a scene was scary enough. "Pastor, don't listen to his rubbish. If I start blabbering, it'll be a disaster. So how about you keep my mouth shut?" "I heard you're quite the charmer," he said, grinning like a madman. "If you have something to say, spit it out. I like it straightforward." He threatened to spill the beans to the church folk about our little secret, that our soon-to-be-born child was his, which would undoubtedly complicate matters. The congregation might leave and the scandal could prove detrimental. He suggested that it would be better if he kept his mouth shut and disappeared from the church for a good amount. "I won't ask for much, Pastor. How much are you willing to offer to keep me quiet? Are you scared now?" He was under the impression that he held all the cards. "You're mistaken, Pastor. I am the alpha here, and you're the beta. If you mess with me, it won't end well for you. I'll call you later about the amount." With a smirk on his face, he stated he would never show up in front of us again if we met his outrageous demands. When he demanded an exorbitant amount of money, my current wife intervened. "Honey, don't give that man a dime. He's a gambling addict. He'll just keep threatening us. I'll leave. If I have to. Even if rumors circulate for a while, they'll soon be forgotten if you remarry. Don't waste your money on him," she proposed, her voice steady. "Why would you even consider leaving?" "Why does that come so easily to you?" I questioned her. She insisted that she was thinking of what was best for me. "That son of a gun ruined your life, and he's still playing around," she expressed, trying to keep her composure. "Honey, I'll handle this. Just stay calm." "Hey, you, my ex-husband, are you promising to disappear if I give you $1 million? I asked. Whether he had decided to take the offer, all he did was let out a long sigh. "I don't have $1 million right now, but I'll have it for you by the weekend after the service, once the congregation has tithed. I'll give it to you in several portions. As long as I get my money, I don't care how it's done. On second thought, $1 million seems a bit low considering I'm letting the two of you live your lives in peace. Make it $2 million, he responded, a malicious smile creeping onto his face. "All right, then get out," I spat out, losing my temper. "Calm down, Pastor. Isn't it against your principles to speak so rudely?" he taunted. "Since you said you'd pay, I'll leave. See you next Sunday." And with that, he sauntered off, leaving a trail of chaos behind him. My ex-husband walked away that day, smugly confident with his promise to collect his payday. Furious, I confronted my husband. "Why did you agree to give that man money? Why did you agree to give that man money? We can survive without him. I don't want to live a life that's hindered by his shadows." My wife interjected, "Please stop talking about leaving and don't even think about paying that man. I'll handle this. All you need to remember is 2 things. I am your wife, and the child in my womb is our son. That fact will never change." I fell silent at his solemn tone. He wouldn't disclose his plan, so I had no choice but to wait and watch. And a week later, the Sunday we'd agreed to pay my ex-husband arrived. He hopped out of his car, casually whistling, cheerfully greeting the church members. "Good morning, Pastor." "Mrs. Pastor." My husband met him with a warm smile. "Hello, driver. How about you join us for the service today? There will be prayers, sermons, and a special gift." The ex-husband agreed. "That sounds like a good idea. I'll stay till the collection plate fills up. Then I can watch all the money pour in and collect my gift." And with that, the 3 of us entered the church. My husband stood before the cross, engraved pulpit, and began the opening prayer of the service. "Lord, even if my actions today displease you, please forgive me. I'm doing this to thwart evil. I ask this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen." His prayer was much different from his usual prayers, which worried me. He seemed intent on some action. Meanwhile, my ex-husband sat grinning, anticipating his windfall. As the choir concluded, my husband began his sermon, but instead of his usual biblical narratives, he broached a topic unrelated to any scripture. "How do you feel about raising a non-biological child with all your heart? Is it something to be ashamed of, or is it understandable?" The congregation responded that it was understandable if the child was given sufficient love, regardless of biology. With that, my husband began a shocking confession. "The reason I brought up a child born out of heart is because it's our story. My wife remarried with me shortly after divorcing her ex-husband. But later, we discovered she was pregnant with her ex-husband's child. She wanted to leave me out of guilt, but I stopped her. I decided I could raise the child as my own. She isn't guilty of anything. I chose to marry her, and I chose to be the father of the child. If any of you are disappointed in me, feel free to leave the church now." The congregation was stunned by his confession, but no one left their seats. Instead, they looked at us with sympathy and compassion. Then, applause started rippling through the room, a thunderous sound that continued for a while, signaling their support for our love. My husband leaned back into the microphone. "Today, I have a special gift for our driver. The offering collected today will not be used for church needs, but will be given to him. And if anyone is not comfortable with this, you're free to leave the church." The ex-husband, waiting eagerly for his payday, was taken aback by this unexpected twist. His smug grin disappeared, replaced by a shocked expression. The congregation's applause grew louder, drowning out any response he could muster, and there we stood, embraced by our community's support, while he sat alone and flabbergasted. But there was a disruptive element among us, an unwanted guest, my wife's ex-husband. The man had the audacity to insinuate that the child my wife was carrying was not mine, and threatened to spread these rumors far and wide. He demanded a sum of $200,000. The man in question, none other than the church's very own van driver, seated right across from me. As I raised my voice in protest, the congregation began to murmur, pointing accusatory fingers at my wife's ex. But he remained unfazed, smirking at us. "Well, aren't you a lovely lot ready to hold me up like a hero?" he drawled. "But what will you do if I reveal that your pastor's wife is pregnant with my child due to an affair? Wouldn't it be a matter of time before the pastor loses his position? If you don't want to face such a scandal, pay up." "I will not negotiate with a scoundrel like you," I retorted. "I won't hand over the hard-earned donations of our congregation to a devil like you. Get out of my church. Stay away from my wife. You thought I would back down easily, didn't you? I won't. You should know I'm a tenacious man. I bet you'll be the one reaching out to me soon. Enjoy your worship. With these fools you've got here." As the ex-husband rose from his seat, the congregation followed, clenching their fists in solidarity. It suddenly became clear why I had placed him at the front, preventing an easy exit. As he tried to shove his way through the congregation, the members threw at him the bread they were holding, distributed earlier during the service. A rush of people then charged at him, landing punch after punch. Such behavior is not condoned in a church, but that day, the congregation's fury transformed him into a sorry sight. Beaten to a pulp, he barely managed to drag himself out, crawling on all fours. Even then, movement was hard, and only when he was thoroughly beaten did the congregation stop. His clothes were torn, his hair in disarray as he finally crawled out of the church. I assured my wife that we had nothing to fear from any rumors he might spread. The congregation, too, stood by us, comforting us and encouraging us to stay strong. A month later, our due date arrived. We welcomed a healthy baby boy delivered via induced labor. Our son was as precious as could be, and I felt a wave of relief when there was no sight of the ex-husband. One day, while admiring our child, I asked my wife, "Honey, don't you think our son looks a lot like me? I mean, seriously, he has my eyes, the same spot under the eye, and even his ears and fingers are shaped like mine." "That's a relief, honey," she replied. "I'm glad he takes after you." "Honey, I'm not just saying this. He really looks like my son. If you're okay with it, I'd like to get a DNA test." "A DNA test," she replied, puzzled. "You told me you would raise him with love no matter what. And now you want to put our weak, old baby through that? No matter what?" "I will live as this child's father," I reassured her. "But I can't help but notice how much he resembles me. Let's get a test done. If it's okay with you, of course." I added that if she had any thoughts of leaving me, that was fine too. "Honey, I will never leave you," she reassured me. "I just want to know the truth. I understand it's probably nothing, but I'd rather be sure. Please don't take it the wrong way." With her approval, I plucked a couple of hair strands from our son's head, paired it with some of my own, and sent them off to a DNA center for testing. A few days later, the DNA test results arrived. I'll never forget the moment my husband burst into the maternity ward, visibly excited. "Darling, our son is truly my son." The results came in and it says there's a 99.9 probability. He's my biological child. I was taken aback. What? That can't be. How could he be your biological child? I accused him of having miscalculated the pregnancy timeline. As he handed me the DNA report, I was astounded. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. My husband and I sought out the obstetrician, who explained that sometimes pregnancy calculations can go wrong. I had calculated the dates from a day I was sure I hadn't ovulated, which turned out to be a mistake. So, it turned out that the stress of my divorce had indeed stopped my ovulation. Only after I got together with my current husband did my normal cycles resume. The doctor explained that the date miscalculation happened because I hadn't ovulated for a while. Also, when we first saw our son on the ultrasound, he was larger than average, which made us assume I was around 8 weeks pregnant. So our son was a full-term baby. It was a lot to take in, but the news that our son was biologically my husband's filled us with joy. Our son is indeed your son, not my ex-husband's, I said, relieved. It seems both of us were mistaken, as was the doctor. Maybe it was the universe's way of testing our love, or perhaps it was a sign from God. After digesting this happy news, my husband shared the results with his parents and the church community. Our son was indeed the perfect blend of both of us. My in-laws, who had initially refused to accept me, apologized for their past behavior, embracing both me and our son. The congregation claimed this was all God's will and wished us a lifetime of happiness. Our lives revolved around our home, church, and our son until an obstacle resurfaced. My ex-husband returned, demanding money yet again. "Pastor, that's my son you're holding. If you don't pay up, I'll expose your wife's affair and that the baby is the result of it. It will make for a juicy scandal, and trust me, people will believe it." My husband, however, was prepared for such a situation. He pulled out the DNA report from his suit pocket. "Look, demon, my son is my blood. It turns out my wife had miscalculated the dates of her pregnancy. If you want, we can go to the genetic center together, but it would be better for you never to show your face to us again." As my ex-husband hurled profanities, my husband lunged at him. "I guess I'll have to sin in front of God today. Even God will understand why I need to beat someone like you." He grabbed my ex-husband by the scruff of his neck, landing punch after punch on his face, chest, stomach, and legs. My ex-husband could only whimper in response. After the beating, my ex-husband finally squeaked, "Pastor, you've beaten me this badly. At least pay my medical bills." To which my husband responded by tossing a bundle of cash on the ground. "Take this. It should cover your medical bills and then some. Take the money and never appear before us again." With that, the chapter with my ex-husband finally closed. He crawled away, picking up the scattered bills, gave a final bow to my husband, and disappeared from our lives forever. We breathed a sigh of relief, ready to finally live our happy life. I felt a deep sense of remorse that all this had happened because of me. I sincerely apologized to my husband. "Honey, I'm so sorry. If I had known about my pregnancy from the beginning, none of this would happen. Please forgive my ignorance and foolishness." My husband gently reassured me, "Darling, you've done nothing wrong. Even if our son wasn't biologically mine, there would have been no need for apologies. The problem lies with that beast who tried to exploit our baby for money, not with you. Don't worry about it anymore. He's old and feeble now. Not with you. Don't worry about it anymore. He's old. He dares to bother us again. We'll call the police and have him charged. My ex-husband did not appear after that day. I hope to never hear from him or see his face again. My husband's parents, who had become aware that our son was indeed their grandson, visited daily to care for him. Every time they saw me, they would begin by saying they were sorry. They would take care of the baby, and even when they left, they would apologize again. I had no ill feelings towards them, but their continuous apologies made me feel more at ease. My life finally settled into perfect happiness. Months passed by, and we enjoyed our peaceful life with no incidents. However, some time later, I received a shocking yet strangely satisfying call. It was from the local police station, and they had some unbelievable news about my ex-husband that made me yell out in shock. The police officer said, "We've tried reaching out. No, that man has nothing to do with me anymore. Please contact his family," the officer replied. "The problem is that we couldn't find any living relatives apart from you. What happened is, your ex-husband has passed away on the street." I was taken aback. He died on the street. What? Did he have nowhere to live? Did he die homeless? Yes, it seems he became homeless after losing everything due to his gambling habit. We suspect he lived on the streets and finally succumbed to a heart attack. We are looking for someone to handle his funeral. Feeling a strange sense of satisfaction, I replied curtly, "Well, he's dead. But what do you want me to do about it? We divorced long ago. You should deal with the funeral arrangements or find someone else to do it. I have no connection with him now. Don't bother me anymore," and hung up. Receiving news of my ex-husband's death filled me with a sense of relief and freedom. I felt as though a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was as if my blood flowed more freely through my body. Was I a terrible woman for feeling this way? Regardless, I relayed the news of my ex-husband's demise to my husband, telling him that now there was absolutely nothing left for us to worry about in our life. Over the next couple of years, our family expanded with the arrival of a daughter. Memories of my ex-husband no longer surfaced in my mind. And that is why I felt compelled to share this long, twisted tale of my past with my ex-husband and my present with my husband. I hope it adds some interest to the stories you've been hearing. I will end my story here, praying that only happiness and joy fill your homes. Take care, everyone.